Live. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and this is going to be a little bit of a different video than what we normally do. First of all, you might notice I'm not as cheerful or as energetic as I usually am. I'm going to try to be, but I'm going to be perfectly honest. I have been very, very, very sick this last week. I have been so sick with a bad stomach flu, and my energy has not come back. And you also might be noticing, if you happen to come here live, that this is up at like, what, 10:20 at night. Like, who live streams at 10:20 at night when they have a channel that peaked like two and a half years ago? Well, people like me who can't sleep and who, they're just kind of finding the loneliness of the house. I mean, my wife's in the other room. She's sleeping. The pet is doing her thing. But there's, it's just one of those nights where it's like just because of everything that's happening, just need to talk to someone. And there's no one to talk to at this point in night. So even if no one except for Hamster Wheel shows up, I kind of figure, well, if I'm talking to the camera, I'm keeping myself preoccupied, and that's kind of how I'm going to cope with this tonight. The other thing is that I'm talking about, this is all going to be like a little personal thing. Yes, Calvin, you're really the second one. And just going to be sharing a story. This is really of no consequence whatsoever. I actually half debated talking about how gas prices might finally do what I and other Uber tubers couldn't do, which is bring down Uber and Lyft. But I think I'll save that for Sunday. We'll be doing our super pumped discussion for episodes 3 and at that point 4. So that would probably be, I'm sure it would come up at that point. So that's where we're going to talk. But I am going to use this time where I can't sleep, where I am so drowning in my thoughts that I need to be saying something to someone, even if it's just a couple people at an odd time of the night. We're going to be talking about something that has actually gave me nightmares for many, many years. And that is this thing. This is a Target Visa card. Actually, this card's in very, very good condition. I don't know if you can see it, but it looks almost brand new. It almost looks brand new now. The Target Visa card is a credit card that obviously was branded for Target stores. You would use it and you would get points, like 5% cash back in points or something for Target stores, and then you could get some cash back rewards at other places that you used it, usually 1%. Actually, I think it was a cash back rewards card. And they no longer do this card. It has since been rebranded the Red Card, although there is still a MasterCard version out there, and yes, we will make a video about that at some point. But this is the card that gives me nightmares. This is the thing that caused me to lose so much sleep at night, which is why it seems almost appropriate to talk about it on a night that I can't sleep. And the reason it gives me so much grief just to think about it is the fact that Target was my first job, and I had to get people to sign up for these cards. And the funny thing is, considering my recent videos with credit cards and everything, you would think that that would be like a dream job for me. Like, that's like your thing. You can sell the card, you can point out the benefits, you can get people to sign up for it. And it wasn't like that at all. First of all, when I was working at Target, keep in mind I was 16 at the time. First job. I mean, this is a while ago. This is like 20 years ago we're talking about. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't care about credit cards. I was always told to stay away from credit cards if that was possible, that they were necessary evil. Now, I do still agree to a certain extent that they're necessary evil. I don't believe everyone should have all the credit cards that I have. The only reason I have the credit cards I have, and am comfortable having the credit cards that I have, is because I pay them off. And if you can't do that, then it's not worth getting into that mess. But if you can pay it off, then credit cards offer a lot of opportunities. And in fact, my wife even has the Target Red Card because we have a Target that's not too far from us, and the perks were so logical, why wouldn't we have signed up for one? But at the time, didn't know about any of that, and I didn't care. But if there was a particular reason, well, I skipped a step. Another reason that these cards were not fun to try to sell at the Target store, they weren't particularly easy to get. I mean, store-branded credit cards today have like a reputation of being fairly easy to get. You usually just need like a FICO score of 600 and no bankruptcies on your credit report. And even if you have a bankruptcy, they might still give you one because the cards are used more to get you into that particular store. And they are given out through companies like Commodity and Synchrony Bank, who will be a little less judgmental of you and your credit score, and they will give you a card, and then it gets you into the store, which is what they're being paid to do. That wasn't always like the case back then. I don't know who, does it say who, this was actually issued by Retailers National Bank. They're like a real bank. So they were a lot more picky about who they would give a credit card to. And even though I can't say for certain what the threshold was, judging from how many people actually got approved on the spot, I think you needed to have like a 680 to a 700. That's just a guess of mine. I don't know for sure. But the third reason I didn't like these cards, and the primary reason, and this was actually one of the reasons I left the job, is because Target made signing people up for these cards a requirement to keeping your job. And in hindsight, I don't know if I would have actually gotten fired. In fact, actually, I probably would never have gotten fired for not selling enough of these cards because there were a lot of times that I simply didn't get enough signups. But the pressure was immense. And it just got worse and worse as the 2 years that I worked for that company went on. So, here's the thing. Let's bring it back to 20 years ago, whatever year that was. And I have my first job at Target. And there's a few things in hindsight that are a little laughable now about that whole thing. You go to orientation, you see a video about how Target employees are not just employees, they're members of the family. I'm sure they are. You see an anti-union video because unions are evil and bad, and even though I am still shaky on unions in some circumstances, I've kind of come to the realization unions, when it comes to very rich companies, is not necessarily a bad thing. Unions for smaller companies, maybe not as necessary, but you know. And then there was actually a whole video dedicated to the Target Visa card, and they said that the Target Visa card was basically the company's future, that it was a core part of Target's business, and as a part of the family, we want the family to succeed, so you will be expected to get Target Visas into people's hands and into their pockets every single day. Now, I don't know why I laughed at the time. I actually thought they were kind of joking to a certain extent, because I was thinking like, well, maybe, I'm sure that they're much more interested in me helping to sell the merchandise, ringing things up at the cashier, doing all that jazz, because that's where the money is, right? The merchandise, like, Target's not a bank, it's a retail store. But no, they were very serious. In fact, later on that week when I was getting trained, I think the first customer that I asked for a Target Visa card, she got annoyed. And after having worked there for a week, I could see why she got annoyed. She probably got this question every single time she walked into the store. And I asked her, "Do you want Target Visa?" She's like, "Nope, don't want it. If you push the topic, I'm just going to leave this cart here and I won't buy anything." So I was kind of like, "Oh, okay, no problem. I'll just ring you up." And keep in mind, I'm being shadowed because I'm being trained now. They don't want to publicly ridicule you in front of the customer unless they absolutely have to. But the person pays their card. It was at least a couple $100. And they left. And the person training me said, Kevin, why didn't you should tell them about the 10% coupon if they sign up for a Target card? And I was like, well, you heard her, right? She was just going to leave this stuff here and walk out if I pushed it, so I didn't. And she's like, well, but why'd you stop? Do you think they're actually going to do that? And I'm like, well, I don't know, but would you want me to risk a big sale for a credit card? The sale that's like worth a couple $100. And she said, if that cart had $1,000 worth of merchandise in it, risk it, and try to get them to sign up for that card. That's when I found out early that they were serious and they meant it. Now, after I beat probation and everything, they made it absolutely clear that one of the things that my employment was hinged on was that I had to get 2 Target card signups a day. 2 a day. Now, it's easy for a few hundred people to go through your line. And so I didn't think much of it. There were most days I could get at least 1, and some other times I could get 2. It wasn't exactly a difficult goal to get. And you do for a few months. There are some days where you didn't get any, but every time you didn't get any, you had to have like a sit down the next day, and they wanted to go over how were you selling the Target card? How were you pitching it to people? And it got really redundant, by the way, to have to do this all the time. But yeah, they had to do it, and then they would give you advice on what they would do for managers who, to my knowledge, had not actually signed anyone up for this card in a long time, at least not since they became managers. So, and that's when I found out that actually everyone was expected to get a card. Even the people in the back in the storage, if they came on the floor, they were supposed to ask every person that they came in contact with on the way back to the back room that, hey, do you want a Target card? They were dead serious about this. By the way, another thing to kind of, keep this in mind. Yes, before anyone asks, this was before the financial bubble. So, you could kind of see, having lived through that, how things like this could contribute to things like that. But anyway. So, like I said, first few months didn't really matter too much. I mean, I got it some days, halfway the other days. Every time I got none, I had to do like a little coaching thing or whatever it was called. And I thought that was, I could have lived with that, I suppose. But then there was one Saturday in particular where I don't know what it was, but I was on a roll. And I got 8 Target card signups that day. I didn't do anything special. I just happened to have the right people come by. And you know what? 5 of them were even approved on the spot. Unheard of. Most of the cards that I got people signed up for, they'd have to wait for a mail response, and then they got pissed at me because they weren't going to get that 10% off coupon that day. But that day, just a lot of people got it. In fact, I got one of the Target cards because one person got one, signed up for one, got it, used their 10% off, and the person behind them said, I want 10% off too. Can I sign up for that card? And it worked. So that was kind of a good day, and managers were high-fiving me, or they were patting me on the back, metaphorically speaking, of course. And I thought I was doing pretty good, but there was a downside to that, and I didn't know it was coming. And the downside was that, they started telling people that I got 8 Target cards that day. And they started telling people, like, yeah, you see how easy it is? Even Kevin can do it. So we're going to raise, I'm going to assume that this was the most cards a single person had gotten in a while. But it's like, look, if Kevin can get 8, everyone should be able to get 6. So they, for having a day where I got way more card signups than I usually, and it was a fluke. It was an absolute fluke. There was no different strategy about it. I just happened to get lucky that day. Not only did they factor that in to what my expectations would be, even though nothing in my history suggested that I could do that more often, but they were going to demand other people start doing it. And so I became a little unpopular after that. Because, of course, when someone would point out, I don't know how to get that many cards a day. They're like, well, go talk to Kevin. He got 8 in one day. And I know because people are like, well, what did you do to get 8 cards? It's like, nothing. I just asked. And they said yes. I mean, it really was that simple, but it's also that fickle. Like, it doesn't mean that when you ask, you're going to get one, of course. And it was aggravating. And here's the thing. I probably should have mentioned this. I don't know if I did already or not, but if I didn't, meeting your quota was part of keeping your job. And they say if you don't get enough cards, then you might not have a job anymore. Now, they said this for a long time, and considering I left Target of my own volition, maybe this was never going to happen. Maybe they were just trying to scare you. I don't know. It certainly seems feasible now that they were trying to scare me. But bottom line, to a 16-year-old, that's a scary thought. And I liked having a job. I liked having spending money. I liked being able to with Target, I remember after I'd gotten a few paychecks, I realized one day I could buy a Nintendo GameCube. I just have the money. And there's no saving for months and raking yards and things to get it. I've got the money because I've been making it. So I'm just going to go buy it. Now, it helped that they were giving away 3 free games when you bought the system. Nintendo was really trying to get the systems out there. So it's like, oh yeah, that pays for itself. But it was I think even my dad, when he saw that I bought a GameCube and he kind of realized oh yeah, he's got a real job now. He doesn't need to be begging me to find odd jobs for him so he can save up for one of these game consoles. It was a very, very, very big change in my life, if you will. But yeah, that 6 card thing became a problem. Now, the thing is, when I said I always got 1 to 2 pretty consistently, there were days where I would get 3 or 4 or even 5. I just remember 8 was a big deal, and the quota went up significantly after that. Well, after a few more months of that, then they decided the numbers were too low for the cards. As in, everyone wasn't really getting enough. So they needed to punch it up. So what were they going to do? They were going to give you a 20-ounce soda for every card you got. Which, hey, for a 16-year-old, that's great. Most of the older Target employees there did not care. They were like, whatever. That doesn't motivate me at all. It just doesn't. But here's the thing. Target wanted something for that soda. Because they were now going to be giving you free sodas, they expected you to get 10 a shift. 10. Now, they could argue all they wanted about you get a few hundred people. You interact with a few hundred people every day, and this is less than 1% of the customers. And it's yeah, but you find out pretty quickly most people don't go to Target to sign up for credit cards. A lot of the people who shop there frequently already had them. And the people who didn't got annoyed when you asked. It got to the point where at one point I actually kind of just stopped asking. Because I would hate to see a customer say, hi, how you doing? I'm doing fine, how are you? It's hey, have you considered, do you have a Target card? No, don't want it. And I can tell that I played a part in ruining their day. Which, by the way, I would kind of like to ask someone in early 2000s Target corporation, like, hey, if you know that asking people to sign for these credit cards are actually making your store experience worse, and they might be more inclined to go somewhere else as a result of that bad experience, would you push for the credit card so much? They probably wouldn't care because, again, they felt that credit cards was the future. And it makes a little bit of sense, because what do people do when they get like a credit card, especially if they're not financially savvy? They go to Target, they buy a bunch of cheap crap, and then they spend years paying interest on, to where like that, that dollar Pepsi that they bought ends up costing them $5 in the long run. Like that's what they wanted. They didn't care so much about the customer experience. But I started caring. So I would only ask when there was like a manager within earshot. And then about close to the end of my tenure with Target, one of the managers who was above everyone, he was ousted from the company, like he was let go. I'm not going to name who he was, but he definitely had a hard time. He was very flirtatious with the girls, and he got into some trouble for that. So we'll leave it at that. Because I don't know all the details. I just knew a couple friends who basically did not appreciate how they perceived him to be trying to get with them. And that's what I know. Well, he was let go from the company, and a new manager was installed in the company. And she wanted to make her mark. And here's the funny thing. When a manager needs to make their mark at Target, at least at the time, I don't know if this is still the case now, but at the time, if a manager was to make the mark at a Target, you would think that it would be something like sales improved, or customer compliments went way up, or something like that. No. You make your mark by selling more Target cards. And she said on day one, we need to get aggressive about this. From now on, everyone needs to get 20 Target cards per shift. I couldn't believe that was... I mean, at that point, even longtime people there actually raised their hands. No one has ever gotten 20 cards in a shift. And you expect all of us to? And then she quoted some guy from a Georgia Target got 20 cards in one day. And if he can do it, so can we. Because we live in California, dang it. And I think at that point, most of us just gave up. It's like, this is an unrealistic expectation. And even during like the annual coachings, which, keep in mind, after 2 years, like that got so stinking old. I just kind of started tuning out. Like, I would like say, yeah, what do you suggest we do when yada yada yada. But then she took it a step further. She said that she would start writing people up if they didn't get them. I didn't believe it, by the way, until the next day, where I was pulled aside and I was given a write-up because I didn't produce 20 cards. Now, I produced 4 that day. That was actually pretty good day. And she said, you didn't even come close to reaching the goal halfway. I said something that I really had never said before. I'd never talked back to the manager like this. And I said, well, frankly, it's because I'm selling a product that nobody wants. That was probably not a wise thing to do. She got really upset. Then she gave me a warning. It wasn't an official warning, but she warned me verbally to drop the attitude, because family members do not have that kind of attitude with their families, even though it's like, yeah, they absolutely do. Of course they do. And it turns out everyone that day got a write-up, because nobody got it. And then the next day, everybody got a write-up. And then they started scheduling meetings during the workday, which, at first that was fun. Like, okay, sure, that gets me off the floor for half an hour, but then have to do it all the time. I mean, I'm wondering, like, if it was like a Clockwork Orange thing where it's like if they, show me the same thing over and over again, eventually I would be so terrified of having to watch that stupid video again that I would magically improve my target card sign-up skills. I don't know. It was it was just a weird thing, and so it kind of got to a point where now I'm there almost 2 years at that point, but I see Best Buy as hiring. I'd much rather work at Best Buy. I like their stuff better, and this thing is causing me nothing but headaches. So I put my 2 weeks notice, I collect my final paycheck, and I go to work for Best Buy. Now, the Best Buy story, I had a kind of a similar problem to a certain extent, and it probably meant that because I didn't perform as well as other people, I didn't get to stay there very long. Where, yeah, they also had a Best Buy credit card, but they wanted you to do more than just the Best Buy credit card. They also wanted you to get, like, the GameFly subscription and the Rhapsody subscription and tack on a gift card, things like that. But yeah, because of this thing, I had nightmares, and it was actually one of the things that it's gonna laugh now again, considering where we are with my channel now, where I was kind of like, I do not ever want to get credit cards. I don't want to get wrapped up in this. These things are evil. Now, of course, that was not entirely true. Again, they can be if you don't pay them off. But that's the story about the Target Visa that made me very, very nervous for my late teenage / early adult years. Now, it's not the worst experience I've had with credit cards and signups. I had a much, much worse experience with Fry's Electronics and their credit cards. And that's a story I will share later on. It's, like I said, I'm not feeling well, so my energy is draining right now. I don't know, it doesn't look like it, but it really is draining. So, we're going to end this video here. Thank you to everyone who actually tuned in live and listened. I would like to know what your experience was. Did any of you work for Target in the early 2000s? Do you remember this design? And do you remember how much pressure you were put on to get these cards? Like, how did that make you feel? Like, those stories are what the YouTube comments box are for. So please, let me know. Let everyone know. Swap notes. And we'll catch you next time. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one. Hey, repair your PC. So glad you're here. But the show is coming to an end as I reach over and end it.